It's December 16th, 2023, and welcome once again to Political Dharma with Alan Zundel. On today's show, I'm going to be looking at the ballot access of various presidential candidates, as well as a few odds and ends regarding Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential campaign. So, who's going to be on the ballot when you go to vote for president in November of 2024? Well, that depends on three things. First, which political parties qualify for the ballot in your state. Second, which candidates those parties nominate for president and vice president. And third, which independent candidates qualify for the ballot in your state. We won't know which candidates will be nominated by the main political parties until later next year, but I've started to track which states the parties and independent candidates have ballot access in. The chart you see, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, is a first draft and may need some corrections, but you can already see some news from this week. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West have qualified for the ballot in one state each. Let's start with the news about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I've been focusing on the last couple of months in this show. Here's a clip from an interview he did on the Breaking Points YouTube channel a couple of days ago.
Well, you're probably the foremost independent candidate that we've seen in this country for quite a long time. And one of the things that we really want to do in this interview is to take you seriously. So one of the things that you've talked about is gaining ballot access. So can you guarantee that you're going to be on the ballot in all 50 states? We just saw an Axios report. You've got about $15 million appropriated. You're going to be on the ballot in 8 states that you're targeting. But can you guarantee you're going to be on all 50 of these ballots?
We'll be on the ballot in all 50 states and the district.
Okay. And what's the plan for that? Because as I understand it, you're not on the ballot yet in a single state. I know you successfully were able to challenge the law in Utah, but do you have ground operations in every single one?
We're now fully submitted and approved in Utah.
Okay.
So that's our first state.
In case you didn't catch it, Kennedy said that he had successfully obtained ballot access in the state of Utah. Utah has a fairly lenient set of requirements for getting on the ballot, which include 1,000 valid voter signatures and a $500 fee. Sounds pretty easy. I also reported last week that the Kennedy campaign had brought a legal challenge to the state of Utah for its very early deadline of January 8th to meet those requirements, and that a little later in that same week, the state of Utah gave in and extended its deadline to March 5th. Now, I have to wonder if the Kennedy campaign wasted its money challenging that deadline, since they turned in their required signatures and paid the fee, apparently, well before the January 8th original deadline. If you're interested in RFK Jr.'s take on the Israel-Gaza conflict, by the way, that Breaking Point's interview also had a very spirited debate with Kennedy and Crystal Ball, the co-host of the show, about this topic. Here's a clip from that interview.
It's almost a one-to-one relationship with the more brutal the response from the Israelis, the more support for radicalism that there is.
You can filibuster.
I'm not filibustering. You asked me a question. I'm trying to answer it.
I think you're filibustering. You're not answering the question. You're saying drive a wedge. Well, of course Israel's trying to drive a wedge.
By offering some other path that's not terrorism and not violence.
What is that path?
It's a path to a two-state solution or some sort of a just and lasting peace.
And the Palestinians not only have rejected that, but Hamas, its whole purpose was the reason that Hamas was able to get all this popular support and take over was because of its opposition to any negotiation.
Hamas just came out and said that they support Israel's PLO and recognize Israel's right to exist. On the other hand, you have the ambassador. You have the Israeli ambassador to the UK saying we will absolutely no to a two-state solution.
I just cannot let you tell that's just not true.
It just happened.
That was a particularly contentious moment and a little hard to follow because they were talking over each other and Kennedy was getting a little frustrated. But overall, in this 20-minute segment on the Israel-Gaza conflict in a 60-minute interview, I would say that Kennedy listened carefully, answered her questions, and was very forthright in his views. I have to wonder if either Joe Biden or Donald Trump would have done as well trying to answer questions, detailed questions on any issue over a 20-minute segment within a 60-minute interview. But that aside, let's take a look at Cornel West. West, a well-known academic and public figure on the progressive side of the political spectrum, actually calls himself a democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders, is also an independent candidate for president. This week, he announced that he had secured ballot access in the state of Alaska by being nominated by the Aurora Party of Alaska. Here's his announcement on his X account.
I would first like to thank my precious brothers and sisters and siblings of the Aurora Party in Alaska for putting me on the ballot from the bottom of my heart. I say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm concerned with 4 issues. 1, I want public ownership, state-owned enterprises to supplant the private corporations obsessed with profit and downplaying the social needs of people and the flourishing of the natural beauty of the environment. 2, I want to cancel the Willow Project as but one moment in a larger vision of ensuring that there's regulations for environmental protection in Alaska. 3, because I'm so dedicated to the abolition of poverty based on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer, Alaska can be the first state to not just abolish poverty, the 11% of our precious citizens in Alaska living in poverty, but have universal basic income. Alaska leading the way. And then last but not least, ranked choice voting. Again, Alaska leading the way. A central plank in our platform, ranked choice voting. Alaska, thank you. Let us be on the cutting edge for truth, justice, and love.
According to the Independent Political Report, which covers third parties and independent candidates, the Aurora Party is a relatively new political organization. Just a few weeks ago, it was classified by the state of Alaska as a political group seeking to be recognized as a political party. It had to gather 3,614 valid voter signatures to be reclassified as a limited political party, which, according to Alaskan law, means that it is, quote, organized specifically for the purpose of selecting candidates for electors for president and vice president, end quote, of the United States. The party doesn't exist in any other state and isn't going to run candidates for any other office. This news is a setback for the Green Party of the United States because they had expected to put their eventual nominee on the ballot line of the Aurora Party of Alaska. Now, there is a Green Party of Alaska, but it was disaffiliated from the National Green Party in January 2021 because in the 2020 presidential election, it had put Jesse Ventura on its ballot line instead of the National Party's nominee, Howie Hawkins. On its website, the National Green Party states that the Aurora Party was planning to apply for accreditation with the Green Party, and that petitioning was underway by the campaign teams of the 2024 Green Party presidential contenders. I don't know exactly what happened, but it looks like the West campaign got the jump on the Green Party candidates to get the Aurora Party its limited political party status and their presidential nomination. There must be a story behind that, and I'd like to know what it is. Haven't found out yet. Dr. West was running for the nomination of the Green Party of the United States before he switched to being an independent candidate in October. In an interview with Politico this week, Dr. West said he expected to qualify for the ballot in 15 states by mid-March, 30 states in early summer, and maybe 40 or so by the time of the general election next year. He added that he was seeking access in all 50 states, but that he also knew that it's going to be an uphill battle. I'll be tracking the progress in ballot access of both the Kennedy campaign and Dr. West, but let's get back to my chart to look at how the Green Party and other parties are doing as to ballot access. After the first 2 lines listing RFK and Cornel West with ballot access in 1 state each, you see the Green Party listed with ballot access in 18 states and the Libertarian Party in 34 states. I wasn't able to verify their status in all the states listed, but utilized what information I was able to dig up so far, and the numbers should be roughly correct. Each of the two parties lost ballot access in some states since 2020, when the Libertarians were on the ballot in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, and the Green Party was on the ballot in 30 states. They lost ballot access in part due to their performance in the 2020 presidential election, and in part because of changes in ballot access laws in a few states. The Greens and the Libertarians will choose their nominees at their national conventions in 2024. So far, the Green Party lists 5 candidates seeking their nomination, the best known of whom is Dr. Jill Stein, who entered the nomination contest when Cornel West dropped out of it. Stein was the party's presidential candidate in 2012 and 2016, and so is likely the front runner in this race. The party has not yet scheduled the time and place of its 2024 national convention. According to the LPDL website, LP meaning Libertarian Party, which describes itself as a collaborative history of the Libertarian Party, there's 10 candidates seeking the Libertarian Party's 2024 presidential nomination. I don't recognize any of their names, but then I haven't been tracking this party very closely. Their nominating convention is scheduled for May 24th through 26th, 2024 in Washington, D.C. Going back to my chart again, after the Green and Libertarian parties, I've listed No Labels. No Labels was founded in December 2010 to support a bipartisan, quote, common sense majority, end quote, and its political orientation is usually described as centrist. It's not actually organized as a political party, but as a nonprofit 501c4 organization, which refers to the U.S. tax code provision allowing a nonprofit organization to engage in limited forms of political activity without revealing the names of its donors. Currently, No Labels has obtained ballot access in 12 states. It says that if Biden and Trump are the major party nominees in 2024, it'll run a unity ticket for president and vice president composed of both a Democrat and a Republican. This strategy of gathering signatures for ballot access without being a political party is pretty novel, to say the least, and has been subject to legal challenges. On its website, No Labels says that because it will not fund or help run any candidate's campaign, but only give them ballot access, it's not a political party and can't be forced to disclose its donors, which seems to be the important thing for them. According to an article in the Dispatch yesterday, the group has been in disarray about a number of issues, including how it's actually going to select its candidates for president and vice president, if it, in fact, does end up doing that. Just 2 weeks ago, it canceled its plans for a mid-April in-person nominating convention in Dallas, Texas, and decided instead that it was going to hold a virtual gathering at a date that it has not yet announced. A side note about No Labels is that in January 2013, it helped organize the Problem Solvers Caucuses in the U.S. Congress. One member of the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House of Representatives is Dean Phillips, who's currently running in the Democratic Party presidential primary. Phillips is interesting to me because he says he favors things like reducing housing costs and student debt, establishing universal health care, piloting universal basic income, and changing our electoral system, such as with open primaries or ranked choice voting. Now, all of these things appeal to me, although I doubt that he'll be able to get much Republican support for any of them. So he seems to be moving a little in a progressive direction, but still challenging Joe Biden as a younger version of Biden centrism. But he will be someone to watch if for some reason Joe Biden ends up dropping out of the race. The Democratic and Republican parties, of course, have ballot access in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, our national capital in Washington, D.C. To wrap up today's show, I'm going to look at a few odds and ends about the Kennedy campaign. I've been talking about how hard it is going to be for him to win due to the Electoral College, not so much due to ballot access, but to the way the Electoral College functions, and have said that it's more likely that he will actually end up depriving any of the other candidates from getting a majority in the Electoral College, and therefore the choice of who the president's going to be would be devolved to the House of Representatives. Here's what Kennedy had to say about that in the Breaking Points interview.
What is your end game if there is no Electoral College victory for the House of Representatives, and how would the election play out? I think a lot of people have been asking that question with respect to your run.
If that happens, if there's a contingent election, the Senate then chooses the vice president.
Right.
And the House chooses the president. And they get one vote per state. So if you look at an electoral map, there's 9 more Republican states than there are Democratic states. And so you would assume that Trump would run. But if you look at the individual congressional delegations, neither candidate can get 26 votes. Because a lot of the delegations are split from, just as an example, Minnesota is split 50-50.
Yes.
So the Republicans are never going to vote for Trump because their careers will be ruined. And the Republicans are never going to vote for Biden, and Democrats are not going to vote for Trump. So they would have to find a compromise candidate. And in that case, I'm probably in good shape because my polling, all the public polling shows my favorability ratings ahead of anybody. So what that would mean is that I'm the second choice for people who are voting for Trump, and a lot of people are voting for Biden. So that's one scenario, but this is all speculation and nobody and spin and all of that, which I don't like to do, and predictions. But we have looked at it.
Well, you have to think about it.
Yeah, we have to think about it.
Last week, I also raised the question of how the Kennedy campaign and the Super PAC American Values 2024 were both going to help get Kennedy ballot access in the states without illegally coordinating between them, which a super PAC is not supposed to do, is coordinate with the candidate's campaign. I did email both the Kennedy campaign and AB24 to ask how they were going to achieve this. Haven't heard from either of them yet. So I just wanted to update you on that, and I will give you what answer I get if I ever get an answer from them. Finally, there's this one other item regarding Kennedy's campaign. This week, I received an email inviting me to a private reception with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here in Oregon on January 6th. Of course, this is a fundraising event. 2 things caught my attention about it. The first is that business attire is recommended. I don't own a business suit, although I might have a suit jacket from about 30 years ago still hanging in the closet, although I'm not sure if I have a pair of pants to go with it that fit anymore. The other item that caught my attention is the price of the tickets. A campaign contribution of $3,300, $2,400, $1,000, or $500. $500 is more than I've ever given to a single political candidate in my whole life. Clearly, his campaign is not just relying on small donors, but is targeting bigger donors who do have campaign limits when they contribute to his political campaigns, but he's trying to get people who can get closer to that limit. Sorry to say, Bobby, but I'm not one of those people, so you're kind of wasting your time on me. Obviously, you're not going to be following Bernie Sanders' path of relying on donations of an average of $35 or whatever it was. But I understand you need to raise money, especially as an independent candidate, because you got all those legal challenges you have to mount against the major parties. And I am supporting Kennedy in various ways, but not to the tune of $500, not yet anyway. So that's it for this week, and thanks again for watching. I hope you come back next week. If you like the show, please subscribe, hit the like button, share it with other people, put comments down below so I can see what you think about what I've had to say today. And I guess that's it. Until next time, thanks again. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus. The moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.